This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law. I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey y'all, welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. We would love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a suggestion about a case, because there's always a What the Feezy case breaking around here in Northwest Florida and well beyond the Gulf Coast. We welcome all of our new listeners and viewers, especially in Alabama, which I tell you what, we've been covering a lot of cases in Alabama, and we just love us some Alabama stories. In fact, this coming episode is going to be pretty much nothing but Alabama cases, and we're going to talk about those in just a second. But first, we're going to touch on a couple of Alabama cases that we've covered recently involving Whit and Britt. Who dat, you say? Well, Pam's going to tell us.
Well, we got Whitney Cheatham up in Coleman, Alabama, with her spa up there and her smiling mugshot.
And her drug trafficking charges.
Drug trafficking, husband that met Chris Hansen, daddy on the run, and closing down a wellness spa, and all kind of stuff going on with Whitney up in Coleman. And then we got Brittany, one of the Gulf Coast Stapletons.
Yes.
Brittany with an I. And she's running back and forth to Alabaster, back and forth here. She's a agent with an insurance company up there, and she's down here, I think, on the coast sometimes without Josh, because Josh Stapleton is in jail or prison or whatever you want to call it.
Right, exactly, on CSAM charges, essentially. But yeah, it's more like the Gulf Coast Stapleton now, because one's behind bars in Georgia. And this one is, if you've not followed this, you can check out our episodes on the Gulf Coast Stapletons. But, it's called Absolutely I Knew.
100%.
Her quote when she said, when people were confronting her about her husband's charges and how he ended up in prison on CSAM, and she was like, absolutely I knew, and has just taken every criticism that anyone has leveled at her. I think people are all but just asking, begging, pleading, wondering, questioning why there isn't some sort of sense of embarrassment and some sort of shame. Obviously, she's not the one that looked at this, but if you're married to somebody who does, and it's more than just defending him. It's almost like, I'm going to beat you all down like a whack-a-mole game for even criticizing him.
That's right.
And this is a man who said, a body's a body, you know?
Yep, a body's
when
a body.
When questioned about it, according to police.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. That's really not so hard to understand, because she ran Josh and Carlos the dog like that, like she's their handler. Everything comes out hard and intense, and she did build up her followers, and she's not going to get off this internet because they got something going on that they got 2 million views on, and I've been listening to jail calls between them, and they're being recorded, and they just say all kind of stuff. Well, Brittany was talking to him and said, we got 2 million views on this one, and Josh said, well, how much do we make on that? And she said $600. So it's a business, and he's obsessed with, when he gets out, his hobby is going to be to sue everybody for slander and putting him in. You pled guilty, broski.
How many times have I heard that, especially being a journalist for as many years as I have? Like, oh, you've been talking about me, I'm going to sue you. You can go on our comments on our YouTube channel and look at it. I'm going to sue you for talking about me. Like, well, it doesn't really work that way.
No.
As it has to be. This is why the journalism exists.
Right.
And not just anybody can run around and say they're a journalist. I mean, I guess you can, but when you get sued, then you might realize, okay, maybe I should have followed some, different rules. But at any rate, it's about verifying, it's about attribution, it's about relying on attributable sources, whether that's law enforcement, court documents, talking to witnesses at the scene, using people's own words from their own statements in their videos. You know, that's another part of it too. As long as you can back up what you're saying in a reasonable way, then for the most part, they have no leg to stand on. But they always get their panties in a wad, especially the ones that, in my opinion, have the most to be ashamed of. They're the ones that want to push back the hardest.
Right. Well, her personality is like that, just to push and say, you're going to believe what I told you to believe. And that was all going good when the fantasy was all pretty and Josh wearing mix and match like
they were dressed
animals.
As Ken and Barbie,
yeah,
right?
Like that,
Girl
you know.
animals.
So because Brittany picks out this and that and the other, and they, you know, rate my fit, you know, all that kind of stuff going on. And it's just so different now, but not so much, because Josh was upset because one of the guards asked him, hey, ain't you that guy on TikTok? And he's like, now everybody's going to be da-da-da-da, you know, knowing who I am and get upset with me. And she told him,
maybe you just shouldn't have done what you did, man.
This never goes back to that, ever.
I just want to blame people for talking about it. Well, and true to form, you know, what we were talking about, the similarities between Britt and Whit. There was a little video of Whitney Cheatham coming out of jail when she was, or excuse me, coming out of the courthouse when she had requested a reduction of her bond, which was denied. And she's still just as pretty as you please, even without her hair all done and no makeup. But she was just, you know, kind of waving at the camera with a big smile. I think it smacked of Britt just a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And it smacked of Luigi, too. I mean, she came out like cheesing again. She cheeses for all the thing in her, as they have called it, peanut butter color jumpsuit.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. But you're right. A lot of people, including these two ladies, there's just not a big feeling of remorse or even just, and I'm not saying that they need to be, you know, and Brittany's not charged with anything. She's just taking heat for what her husband did and her attitude towards that. And then Whitney is innocent until proven guilty. She's just facing these charges. She hasn't been proven guilty in a court of law. So maybe she's just cheesing for the camera because she's like, hey, I'm going to get off of this. You know, who knows?
Well,
but at the same
know.
time, if you're a business owner living in a town where you're raising your kids, it just seems like from a business sense and from a professional sense and just from even the perception of the public before you've even gone to trial, you want to seem like you're taking it seriously, not like, you know.
Yeah, I know. Well,
hey, y'all.
Yeah. Even me being from Alabama, you know, Alabama's my folks. I love Alabama, and we got lots of characters and people. You know, nothing's boring. But we have gone all around the state this last week with stories and stuff. We've had to move them around because we've got so many. But I think Brittany with an I and Whitney with a smile, I think they should just have a chicken fight and let's see who's the queen for this week.
Boy, that would certainly go viral.
It would. But then here you got Alabama telling Florida, of all people, hold my beer and watch what we fixing to do this week.
All right. Well, that's enough about cornbread hell.
Enough. I got butter, though.
That's right. We're going to tear it up after this episode's done. But yeah, we do have a lot to cover in this episode today. Today's episode is called Traumatic Injury or Accident. Tuscumbia divided over battered 15-year-old football player August Borden. Y'all, if you haven't heard about this story, it is tragic and it has people up in arms for various reasons, but it's about an unfolding mystery involving serious, even critical injuries initially to 15-year-old August Borden. He's a high school freshman football player. He suffered severe head and face injuries under what can be described as strange, conflicting circumstances. Different stories are being told about what happened at Deschler High School in Tuscumbia, Alabama. This incident has all but divided the town, so here's some basic info about what happened. On August 19th, freshman student athlete August Borden was found severely injured on campus. This happened after football practice, and he had to be airlifted to a hospital in Birmingham. Y'all, he suffered multiple skull and facial fractures. He was unconscious for 2 days. Initial reports from a 911 call described this incident as a fall, but there have been a lot of conflicting statements from witnesses that have led to a lot of questions, especially from his worried parents about what actually happened. Some people say he was pushed, while others say he fell down a flight of stairs. And because Borden has little to no recollection of this event himself, due to his injuries, the Tuscumbia Police Department is relying on witness statements, and they're getting a lot of conflicting reports. And in fact, the response from the Tuscumbia City Schools, which is essentially their school district that oversees these schools, their response to this incident has been initially was suspiciously quiet, according to some in the community. They say August was injured by a teammate, another football player. We don't have any validation or verification of that at this point. It's talk amongst the town, but there are conflicting. It is confirmed that there's just a lot of conflicting stories about what happened. Police have said that themselves. They are interviewing all these witnesses, saying they're trying to get to the bottom of it. Now, his dad, he has a biological father who is very involved in this. His stepfather is also very involved in this. Of course, his mother as well. And if it weren't for them posting pictures that are just heartbreaking of him recovering in the hospital, and thankfully he is on the road to recovery, but we don't really know how much of an impact these injuries will have on him long lasting yet. But he is recovering at home. But his parents have sounded the alarm, and it has really caught in the attention of a lot of people in that community and well beyond because of these conflicting stories that are coming from the school district. There's even reports that staff were nearby, just as close as 10 feet from when this initially happened. So we're going to have more on what happened to August Borden and where this investigation stands now in just a minute. But going back to Pam's statement of Alabama saying Florida, hey, y'all, hold my beer.
Florida hold the beer.
That's right.
Man.
That's right. He goes, Alabama's like, we're going to show you how it's done.
Yeah, we all around the town.
And this is another Gulf Coast, Gulf Coast cases right here. So we're going to start off with Joe Bischoff. So just in August, this former Foley, Alabama magistrate known as Joseph Joe Bischoff was arrested on a felony charge for allegedly trading THC-laced vape products, like these little vape pens that we've got here, for explicit photos and videos of underage children. Police have described him as a predator, and it seems like that is a good description, Pam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and a lot of people are like, I'm not surprised. You know, a lot of people.
Well, he'd been arrested before.
Right. In Foley. And he played Santa Claus for the city over there every year. He was the photographer for baseball and softball. So, you know, folks that are attracted to CSAM and predators like that, they definitely go to a target-rich environment. And I think you see that all the time. And it's so hard to look and go, well, are they just extra nice, or are they a pervert, or what? You don't really want to think like that. But, you know, kids, they don't know how to tell back stuff like that. They're sitting on Santa Claus's lap, and they don't know if he's a pervert or not. But there was one girl that did a live on this, and she went back to when she was 4 years old telling a story. And it breaks my heart. But this is a magistrate. This is like a judge type person.
I know.
And so we give them a lot of honor. And so he's out, he's 78 years old, 78 years old. Doing this crazy stuff. And so basically in controlled substances, the THC.
Well, it's creepy at any age, but, you know, as they always say, if there's one victim, there's likely that they've targeted others. So if this is what we know about at 78, he's probably, you know, not trying to pass judgment or talk like a prosecutor, but it certainly would stand to reason that there are many more potential victims out there.
It's going to be interesting to follow that one. And then think that he's out on ankle monitor right now.
Yeah, $100,000. The bond was set at $100,000.
Yep. And then there's another employee there in Foley, I think a city employee that they arrested him just recently.
Yeah, Pam's talking about Jeff Scott Phillips. He's a 55-year-old construction project manager for the city of Foley, Alabama. He was arrested on charges of first-degree voyeurism and possession of some pretty nasty stuff. So I'm careful about what I say anymore because you get flagged on social media or wherever. Dinged. Yeah, dinged because you even say the word, but it's basically CSAM. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. But we do talk about it quite a bit. But yeah, so that's another one that happened. And Foley, for those of us who live on the Gulf Coast, we know that's just right over the state line. We're in Pensacola, which is at the far northwest tip of Florida in the Panhandle. And Foley's just over the state line in Alabama in Baldwin County.
Oh, yeah. And I love Foley. My favorite little soda fountains over there. It used to be a Pharmaciana soda fountain, and it's just like nostalgia and going back. So we love Foley. They've got some unfortunate situations going on.
Yeah, we do. All right. Well, and speaking of CSAM charges, we want to go ahead and update you on another case that we've, of course, been following. This is right here in our backyard, Santa Rosa County School District. Another employee of the Santa Rosa County School District is in the hot seat. This is a little bit different situation than what we saw with Matt McChesney. His mother is the assistant principal of Gulf Breeze Elementary School. She has since been placed on administrative leave because there's an investigation into her son over basically CSAM charges as well and possession of those sorts of images. This is a different employee, and he faces termination after being accused of a second incident of inappropriate activity involving student athletes at Central School. We're talking about information technology specialist Keith Elliott. He's actually the son of a Santa Rosa County School Board district member, Charles Elliott. And Keith was notified by the school superintendent that his paid administrative leave status has been revoked. He had been suspended without pay, basically for going into the gym. He had said he had gone to the school to work on computers, and he was working there with several other employees. And during this time, he walked several times into the gym where the girls' volleyball team was practicing. And eventually the principal told him to leave. And he was saying, I did nothing wrong. I was just following orders. I was there for work. I was there to discuss work. That's why I went back into the gym. But it was his second incident. And I think because it comes on the heels of the Matt McChesney case, I do think there's a lot of zeroing in and focus on how the district is handling these sort of incidents. So it will remain to be seen. Again, innocent until proven guilty. And he is certainly saying that he is innocent and that he's being unfairly targeted over this situation. So we'll continue to follow.
Yeah, it's a wild one, too, because he had said, I didn't do anything wrong. And he just resolute in writing it down. He said, honestly, I didn't do anything wrong. I'll be the same way and do like I do now. And then he basically had gone in and posted himself sitting at the scorer's table at the girls' volleyball. All he had to do was not communicate with these students and just do what they ask. And he couldn't do that. That's that lemon dance going on again. Give me your lemons and I'll give you mine.
Well, and he had already been reprimanded and placed on probation late last year for quote unquote inappropriate communications with female students. So, you'd think that would be a warning not to pursue or even give the appearance of anything like that again.
So we got yet another person related to somebody in administration on the school board. And then we've got a student in that. And then we've got another wife that's going, no. So we've got, all this chaos going on. But the bottom line is, every time we talk about these things, who we do not talk about is the children. Every time we get so caught up in this. But people, this lie and deny and push to the side and push back and all that, when you have done something wrong and it's with children and you've been told to stay away from them, that is what you do.
Well, Pam, hold that thought. I know we have a lot more cases to discuss, but real quick, when it comes to having somebody speak up for you, because that's what we try to do on this show, we tell these stories from the viewpoint of the victims. We do want to give a shout out to our advertiser, Joe Zarzar of Zarzar Law. He is quite the advocate for victims. We've covered any number of cases that Joe handles, including the case of Dr. Thomas Shiknowski, who's accused of removing a man's liver by mistake instead of his spleen. Joe is in the process of doing depositions in this case and trying to get justice on behalf of Mr. Bryan's widow, who is just a precious lady, and we appreciate her as well and her support of the show. And it's going to be interesting to see how this case works out. But we definitely appreciate Joe Zarzar as well. And it's not just this, it's any kind of medical malpractice. If somebody's been hurt through no fault of their own, then Joe Zarzar is there to speak on behalf of victims. And we appreciate his support in cases like the ones that we cover right here on Gulf Coast Confidential, and lots of other cases that don't make headlines but still impact people just as much. I mean, an injury that you didn't ask for, even one that you did do something that maybe put yourself in harm's way, it can alter your life forever. It can keep you from working. It can keep you from enjoying your family, just completely diminish your quality of life. So you do need somebody who knows the law and can advocate on your behalf. And we certainly appreciate Joe Zarzar and Zarzar Law for what they do for victims.
Oh, yeah. He's going to do the right thing.
He is, absolutely. Well, and speaking of doing the right thing, we want to talk about a couple of cases involving what we kind of referred to as hero dads. Just touch on these. The first one is Aaron Spencer from Arkansas. He's been charged with second-degree murder after shooting and killing a man that he found with his missing teenage daughter in October of 2024. So you can imagine a lot of people are rallying around this guy. He reported his 14-year-old daughter missing. This dad found her in a vehicle with 67-year-old 19-year-old Michael Fossler. Fossler was killed during this confrontation that followed, and Spencer basically forced his truck off the road. So we're not going to get into too many more details about that, but we did at least want to mention to you that this dad has got quite a bit of support for basically protecting his child.
Right. And we are going to do that one later. But I mean, it's people are like, well, if I would have done the same thing if that was my daughter. So we'll get all the details as that goes on. But I mean, you're right. He does have a lot of people going, I'm with him.
Right, exactly. And speaking of that, there's another case right here again in our neck of the woods here in the Pensacola area. Sean Hollenbeck, he's a decorated Army veteran, founder of a nonprofit called War Horse Project. But just this past month, he was acquitted of charges for pulling a gun on a rideshare driver who had dropped off his daughter. So he had been tried for that because he basically came running out of the house with a gun and forced this driver to the ground, demanding to see his ID because his daughter had snuck out of the house, called for this driver who had taken her into Pensacola. They lived on the outskirts of Pensacola in a more rural area called Cantonment, north of Pensacola. So she had called for a ride, went down to Pensacola, allegedly bought drugs. That's what she testified at the trial. He used the same driver to take her back, and the dad was frantic and looking, and he comes running out with a shotgun and basically is like, who are you? What are you doing with my daughter? And he didn't realize that it was a rideshare driver initially. And there was a little bit of debate over that. You know, I don't know that he could have or should have necessarily. Obviously, the police thought there was a problem, and so did the prosecution to try him. But he comes running out before he knows all the facts of the situation, armed with a weapon, and forces this man to the ground. And the jury found that he was not guilty. And I can certainly see a father being upset, and it does make you wonder why this driver would take a young girl of that age to Pensacola to do what she was doing and then bring her back. But at the same time, whatever happened to just walking out and saying, hey, who are you and what are you doing with my daughter before shoving a gun in somebody's face? So that's just, those were my thoughts.
Yeah. And then like we never know what dad's gone through with that, if it's happened before. And then you see a grown man bringing your daughter back and you're scared.
You'd lose your mind. I can understand that.
And he's a very educated man. He's a doctor and he's special forces and just very accomplished and stuff. And I just figure he was in panic, you know, without panicking, because special forces don't panic, but that emotion has to go somewhere.
Well, and they're trained to respond and take action. And that's what he did.
Yep. Well, and that was just a few days ago, and the jury made their verdict.
They sure did. All right. And just a couple more cases, and then we're going to get into August Borden. Cardi B, I don't know if y'all follow, you know, top 40 on on the music charts these days, but she's a musician, and there's something going on with her. She apparently got into it with a security guard at a gynecologist appointment, and it ended up in court.
Well, the security guard, Cardi B, you can't help but look at her. She's so cute and everything. And we learned a lot about her. We learned that she said, I identify as Afro-Caribbean, and you know, she's just so cute and everything. She wore a bob wig the first day, a white big long wig, or blonde the next day, and then a dark brunette and stuff. And she came in, and she, you know, she's just a cute little thing. But they said that the security guard said, hey, there's Cardi B. And this was a long time ago. It was
2018.
It was her first baby. And she said, I didn't even take my own security up there because she didn't want people to know just so yet. But anyway, it got into that, you know, finger pointing and stuff. And the security guard has a scratch across her face. And, you know, Cardi B's always got those long, pretty nails and stuff. And so she said that Cardi B scratched her. And Cardi B said, no, I didn't. You know, so anyway, $24 million is what she's suing for.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
And we go back Tuesday because Monday's Labor Day. Back Tuesday to see what Cardi B and them are doing, and I think Cardi B might just get off on this one.
Well, we'll see what happens. You know, part of it is when you're a celebrity, people are going to recognize you whether you want to or not. You can't always turn that off, the curse of fame, if you will. Yeah. But at the same time, you would have thought that this person who's an employee would have had the sense to just, you know, not necessarily embarrass her. I don't think that was their intent.
No, she was excited, I think. You know, you see her, she is remarkable and, you know, in a different kind of way. But I think she was excited. But those of us that work in healthcare, around healthcare, we have to be very careful of privacy with HIPAA because we have people's personal medical information or even the fact that they were there. So I don't know how that went. And I think that's why she lost her job. The security guard lost her job because of HIPAA violations.
That makes sense. All right. And finally, we've got Kelly Ann Bolton. This is another case that we're watching right here in Pensacola. She was arrested for allegedly sending a text message back in June threatening to shoot up a local car dealership, Sandy Sansing Mazda. Basically, she's 56 years old, allegedly sent this threatening text message to the dealership's sales phone after she became frustrated with an employee who was attempting to collect insurance information for a car purchase. And the text reportedly stated, quote, "I'm about to be one that shoots up a place. I'm scaring myself. I'm not feeling boundaries." I mean, I would take that as a threat.
That is
if I got
threat.
something like that, you know? So we'll see what happens with this particular case too. But these are just some cases that we've been watching and wanted to let you know. So we will follow up and bring you more information on all of those later. But now it is time to dive into our main case, the severe injuries suffered by Alabama teen August Borden. Again, Deschler High School freshman August Borden suffered severe injuries just walking from football practice, basically after school, and parents still don't have clear answers on what really happened. So school officials giving conflicting accounts, the community basically divided and outraged because in essence, they feel like they're getting conflicting statements from the school district and school officials because they're trying to protect the football program because possibly another football player was involved in this incident.
Yeah. And that sounds real familiar to me because I've been dealing with that for 15 years with what happened with my sister's ex-husband and all that. And I'm never going to give it up. You know, you have to keep on until you get answers, even if it's 20 years later. But we hope it's not like that here. His name is August, and he's so darn cute.
Oh, he's just as cute as can be.
15-year-old freshman, excited. Only his third week of school, and they were getting ready to have their first game. They said he was real accomplished at playing the saxophone. He liked the saxophone, but then he switched over to football because he liked working out. And you can see pictures of him. He's got like a little six-pack ab, and a little cute face.
He looks like a model. He's just beautiful.
And they say he's sweet and humble and kind. So this would, you know, where I went to school, we had buildings that you walk between sometimes. And a long time ago in the 70s, that's where people stopped and smoked because they could smoke at school.
Oh,
and that's where stuff happened, you know. Teachers don't necessarily go out there. Well, this was sort of like that, going from, I guess, the high school to what they call the armory. And that, I think, would be something like we would call the fieldhouse.
Yes. And in fact, the story that Pam's talking about in regards to her former brother-in-law, if you want to catch that episode, we call it Confessions in the Fieldhouse. And that is taken directly from police reports, investigative school district reports from the Tuscumbia County School District, also involves coaches that were aware of this incident as allegedly. And so what she's talking about, I think we can certainly relate to how this community feels violated. They don't feel like they can trust the answers that they're getting because whether it's at a high school level or a professional level, we see it all the time that, you know, it's about either the reputation or making money or protecting the program and not about doing what's right and bringing the truth to light.
Right.
And we don't know that that's what happened in the situation, but this is what makes people wonder.
Right. It kind of smacks of that. But we got to put the players over the plays, not the plays over the players. Because, and I'm not saying that's what everybody does, because with every one of these stories, there are way, way, way more good people trying to do the right thing than not. But so here we have a young man that ends up with, you've seen his face, got bruises on his face, can't even open his left eye.
Fractures. He suffered brain injuries.
Yep.
He's still suffering. He's still struggling to remember things.
Skull fracture, orbital bone fractures here, can't hardly open this eye, kind of just real roughed up. And they said, well, he fell. And
6 steps.
Yeah.
Come on.
But he was up the stairs, they said. And then it's turned into, so this is just happening. This just started on August the 19th. And so we still are confused about things right now. But August, his mother's name is Kristen, and his stepdad's name is Drew. Van Devender is their last name. And then his dad's name is Jason Borden. So it is these three folks that love him so much. They are very even-tempered people, you know, and just want to find out the truth. They're Christian. They're not like losing their mind over it. They're trying, all they want is answers, and they've just getting the runaround. So what also has popped up now is that now one of the star players, they say, had come up behind August because they said, and this is what they say, that August and a few of his friends were kind of picking at him a little bit about
this other football player.
Right, about
someone he was dating.
A 13-year-old. Or I guess that's 8 or whatever, 13 years old, and he's almost 18. So anyway, I guess how that push and shove goes. And they said that August, someone came from behind him and bear hugged him, and that
until he went unconscious and then dropped him to the ground.
Right. And they said one person said he went limp, one person said he was stiff. So, I mean, people see different things or define things differently. But see, we didn't even know all that for a couple of days. That right there.
And that's what's interesting, too, because his father, you said Jason Borden, he recorded a lot of the conversations with the school district officials, with the school officials, with different people involved. And he basically said that they were like, well, it was just an accident. He fell down these stairs. No mention was made of this bear hug. No deal was made of it. In fact, they were going to continue to play a game. While this kid's fighting for his life in the hospital, unconscious for 2 days, they were going to play a game. And it was, the other team that said, no, we're not going to play because there's something going on and one of your main players is fighting for his life in the hospital?
Yeah, and I don't know if they had that game or not, but this is the thinking back and forth.
Right.
But this all, like I said, this happened on a Tuesday. And so what happened is there's August, and they're saying he was given CPR, but they're also saying he had a pulse, so that's inconsistent. But what is not inconsistent is they ambulanced him out of there. And another mother had called August mother, and there's some people are saying, well, the school didn't call them or this, that, and the other. We don't know that for sure. We do know that if I'm a mother standing there and I know your number and that's your baby, I'm going to call you. I'm not waiting on everybody else. So they may or may not have called, but I don't know how that went. It doesn't seem like it was the proper protocol. And they say there were coaches 10 feet away there.
I saw that.
Here he is being air flighted. The daddy lives in Coleman. And so there's the mother and the stepdad trying to get to UAB, to the children's hospital, I believe that part of it. And then his dad said he made it from Coleman to Birmingham in like an hour, which is usually an hour and a half drive.
Yes.
So there they are. They're scared. Their son's up in an air ambulance, and they don't know why. And nobody's necessarily talking. This kind of hush type of thing.
Which is why I applaud the dad for recording everything. That's so smart, because now they're changing their tune. They've released a statement. The school district up there is essentially saying, no, as soon as it happened, we launched an investigation. And the family's saying, not so much. That's not what you told us. And they're pushing for more transparency. And then you have folks that are defending basically the decisions of the school district and saying, you're making much ado about nothing. But this kid, regardless of what you think, the attention needs to be on him and prayers for his healing and support for his family. And also, of course, answers, because people want to feel like when they send their kids to school that they're going to be protected and taken care of, that if another student allegedly does something to someone else and it results in critically serious injuries like this, you want to know that the administration takes it seriously and is going to fight to protect your child, not fight to keep the truth from coming out necessarily, because it could hurt them. So I am interested in learning more about who this potential other student is, what his family connections are. Would that possibly affect the decision of the school leaders, if they're going to look into this more closely or not? Or is he so talented that it's about affecting the school program, or is it that this kid was well connected and maybe had a daddy or a mommy that just didn't want this to come out?
Right. Well, I mean, they're saying like it was just roughhousing or horseplay or whatever. I've never seen horseplay. We end up with like your face looks like it was pummeled by Roy Jones Jr.
And if it is, let's talk about that. You don't need to be horseplaying like this anymore. This is not Boys Will Be Boys.
Right. Well, and that's what that Boys Will Be Boys should never end up like that. So basically, and then now we got the dads there asking questions.
Thank goodness.
And the mama and the stepdad too. And they've been very kind and open about things like, if you know anything, let us know. So the dad and the stepdad set up an email where people can send in their experiences. And Jason, I just heard yesterday, I was listening to something, and he said, it's very similar to what went on with August, the hushness on it and everything. So Jason decided, okay, let me start. He said even to this day that he hadn't heard from the principal of the school about that. And he heard, I think, from one coach, and then he heard from some people in admin, and it went all down through the talk thing, and said, it's complicated. Why? It's complicated. And Jason is like, no. And then so he sees the superintendent and goes over to talk to him. And the superintendent gets kind of belligerent and like, you don't tell me how to do my job. Now this is what he says to a dad that just knows that his 15-year-old, and he said the other day, he said, my 15-year-old baby boy.
I heard that. That was hard.
It made me cry.
Bless his heart, yeah.
Because he said, I couldn't even communicate with him. So there were no reports. Even the police, when they came there, Jason later goes, look, nobody's answering me. And I know that frustration and the huddle of secrecy. And so he goes to the police department, and the guy he's talking to said, yeah, I was the one there. I didn't write up anything they say is a fall. And you can look and see that a fall doesn't look like that.
No.
So Jason, talked with him. He said, I want to make a report, the daddy. I want to make a report.
And that's how the police report got filed, not because the school did anything about it. And again, all those people around, and not to interrupt and jump in, but it infuriates me. I'm all for team sports. I'm all for teamwork. You were much more involved in sports than I ever was. I was a little bit more into newspaper and music and all that kind of fun stuff. But it's slightly more individualistic, I guess, even though you do work with the team. And I love working with a team. But I think that there's a camaraderie and, a bond that builds between people on the same team in sports that is to be commended. And it builds, relationships and teaches you how to lean on other people to accomplish a goal together. And I think all of that is so positive. But where I feel like it goes the wrong way is this secret keeping, this huddle of secrecy, as we've used that term before in discussing what happened with your former brother-in-law. When institutions find that they're in the crosshairs of a potentially bad publicity or some incident that could impact their program, it's like they put the program, the sport, the institution, those priorities over what's right. Telling the truth is important, and that's what we need to teach children.
Right.
Not that this camaraderie and this tribalism is greater and bigger than the truth and greater and bigger than the safety of other students. So it's their reaction to me that is the problem, if indeed what people are alleging happened. If another student was involved, if he bear hugged this kid because he didn't like being ribbed about who he was dating, if he dropped this unconscious or barely conscious child onto the ground because he thought he was being maligned somehow or criticized, why did they respond by saying, oh, everybody get together, let's get in the huddle of secrecy, here's what happened, don't say what you think really happened, we're just gonna keep it, he just fell down the steps, let's all get ready for Friday Night Lights, people.
Right.
That is crap,
It is.
In my opinion.
It is crap, but that is sports and teams and stuff. That is how you move to the next thing. Shake it off, let's go, huddle up, and you become very, you do, it's the us, we, but then sometimes...
Like you're one big organism as opposed to an individual.
Right, we're better together, which we are. But then we have, these people, some, as I call them, cry bullies, that are always everywhere. You're making fun of me and blah, blah, blah. I mean, whatever. And then they said that they had taken some of the students into the school, I guess, and people are saying they had them sign an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement. These are children, but I don't think that happened. I don't know exactly, but I think maybe they made statements, and maybe they said, sign your name there. I don't know.
That would make more sense.
But don't be asking my kid to sign nothing without me there. And then, all right, so then it's everywhere. It's just, we're marching through this thing here. It's everywhere. And then I guess one teacher gets frustrated and puts on her Facebook, don't Facebook when you're angry, or whatever. She put on her Facebook, take me off this algorithm, because it kept coming up in her feed. Now, lady, this is a child at your school that could have died. If but other things would have happened, we would be talking about manslaughter or murder.
Absolutely.
So we got this teacher that said that it was inconsiderate. Then we got another one that doubled down right with her. So, and then we got the game on Friday night, and then we got the huddle of secrecy, and then we got the star player, the quarterback, and the starting pitcher's the one that they said bear hugged. I'm going to change it to sleeper hold or choke hold, or if he wasn't canoodling with him, or cuddling him, so, and then boom, that goes, and it goes on the internet. And then some influencers or, I guess, creators get hold of it and are saying, hey, what's going on over there? And then some of the folks over there are like, shut up, you ain't from here.
Right. And we're from the South. We know how that goes.
I've heard that before.
Yes.
And I've heard people say that before. And it's like, you ain't here. But then this puts us back. You remember Kendrick Johnson
Yes.
got rolled up in a wrestling mat with his head first in
And
there.
they said it was an accident because he was trying to dive down for his shoe and got stuck.
Yeah.
And his family's like, oh, not just no, but hell no.
That's right,
Multiple lawsuits.
Yep,
Yes.
definitely. And our sweet little Avery Pickle over there, in Alberta.
That is the first thing that I thought of when I first heard about August. I thought about Avery. And, we're still not getting a lot of answers about that. You can check out that episode as well. Just look for Avery Pickle's name there on our YouTube page or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. But Avery Pickle's in the title. But yeah, that's a crazy story too. He was out basically swimming on 4th of July with some friends and people that he worked with. And he's underage, but autopsy results showed that he had been drinking and he was, well over the legal limit and he had drowned. And there was just some confusion over how this happened, how he could be swimming with all these people and drown and no one reported missing or see him and what happened to him or even look for him until his family started looking for him later that night. And it wasn't until the following morning. And apparently the law enforcement and the district attorney over there were going to take it to a grand jury and let them listen to the evidence. But I have been looking and perusing and cannot find where that was ever taken to the grand jury. I'm not saying it wasn't. I just can't get the district attorney's office to call me back and tell me what happened. I did call and say, hey, just following up, wanting to see if y'all did put this together and put it before a grand jury and what they decided or if you still intend to. And I did not get a call back. So I don't know, but we're not going to ignore it.
No, we're not going to stop. And
because people count on that.
Yeah.
They count on you saying no and putting up a wall and making it difficult.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's what's happening in this situation. They may have just been busy and had other priorities.
Well, they've had long enough.
If you don't keep at it, then no becomes just a way of saying minimize and go away.
Yeah, go away. Well, they've got all that. And then I don't know. It doesn't seem like, I always look for teachers or coaches, and both of my sisters, Sharon was a teacher, Trish is a teacher, and I hear them all the time. They're hyper vigilant about when kids are going from one to the other, even in the hall. If you notice, like when I was in school, and teachers didn't have to stand in the hall with us. We just went and did whatever. Now they're posted outside their doors like little sentries, watching. You pick them up there like they got a zone of coverage. So it just seems something, and like I said, we've had some of these coaches in the past like that just ignore things, like Drew Gilbert up at Hoover. He's out there doing inappropriate things because he's mad at one of his players. And then we got Mike Bennett, that coach that I'm always watching because he knows when things are going wrong and doesn't want to change it.
Right.
And
that's all discussed in Confessions in the Fieldhouse if you want to check out that episode.
Right. So a bunch of Pinocchio Joes and just not telling the truth because they double down. And I know what happened in my sister's case. I know it. And that's why I will never shut up. I feel I can relate with Jason and Kristen and Drew on that. But so, all right, we got all that, and then we got August coming home from the hospital.
I know. Thank goodness. I understand that he is recovering at home, and we Godspeed on all that. I do want to mention first here too about this letter that the Tuscumbia City Schools sent out. Basically, one of the things that they said, quote, according to supervising coaches, all players were walking from the weight room to the locker room after working out on August 19th. A coach was in the locker room to open the door and ensure supervision of the players when they walked in the locker room. All the other players and coaches were walking back with coaches intermingled with the players. When the incident happened, there were employees supervising the supervising the students. Employees at the scene immediately called 911 and implemented the emergency action plan for athletics. The first course of action was to ensure that the student was taken care of medically. The 911 center advised the coaches to begin CPR. At no time was a pulse lost, and the ambulance arrived approximately 5 minutes after the call came to them. After the student was stabilized, Tuscumbia City Schools began calling the parents of the student. Again, our first priority is to ensure the student's immediate medical needs are attended to, even prior to calling a student. They basically are also saying that there were no cameras in that area, that even though they do have security cameras, there weren't any that were close by. I think there's a lot of pushback on that as well. Some people are not necessarily buying all that. And they're saying in this letter that immediately after the incident occurred, they launched an investigation, which including interviewing all of the witnesses. And basically, due to privacy, they're not going to talk about the results of that. And that's what his parents are pushing back on to a certain extent, too, saying, no, there was not this well-organized response to A, let us know, or B, start an investigation, that it was more like business as usual. Sorry, what happened? He fell down the stairs.
Yeah. And it's not like, August fell down, and the dad kind of used the analogy of like some goofy kid tripping over a shoestring. And so I thought about that. And, student X, the guy that we're saying that is the one that bear hugged him or chokehold, sleeper hold, whatever you want to call it. And he ends up with his face fractured like that. Student X is, I would think, that if he could come forward or his family come forward, because it seems like people know that, there are two schools of thought there. There are the people that are like, this ain't right, okay? And then there's people like, move on, nothing to see here, quit trying to cause trouble in Tuscumbia, Alabama, and you can see both sides of that. People are going to fall on either side. So all we got to do is find a scintilla of truth, and we can go with that. Some honorable people to line up. If we've got the superintendent saying, you don't tell me how to do my job.
Oh, for heaven's sake. That's totally believable.
Right.
But that's not the appropriate reaction.
And that's per Jason, the daddy.
Correct.
And then you got the principal that won't call you back at all. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't go to their house or go to the hospital or something.
I'd be popping up everywhere. If he's heading down to the pig for a carton of milk, there I'll be.
Yeah, you just got to see for yourself and help him. And they said, that August, he can't remember some things, and it's almost like a blackout. They said that he was in the kitchen, and he said, where do we keep the plates?
Yes, parents asked him where the plates were, and he couldn't remember.
Right, and they said, right here, and they said he got a little bit embarrassed, and that, but they told him, they're so sweet, the people are so sweet, and he's so darling. But then we got the flim flam rim that always goes around places. So we got people with no faith in the system, and people that are just, shut up, this is the system.
Right, well, I thought it was great that Jason and August's stepdad, Drew, got together. They basically shared a call to action with another podcaster who recorded him and put some clips of that out on her platform as well. But on the Facebook page, they shared this call to action. And in it, basically, these two dads are asking for people who've experienced other bad incidents within the Tuscumbia city schools to come forward and send it in a video statement. So I guess they plan to make something that they want to send out to be seen by millions, quote unquote. But I won't read you the whole thing, but basically they're essentially saying they're fighting for the justice that August deserves. And they ask other parents, how do you feel sending your children to school each day, knowing that teachers have openly said they were tired of hearing about a student who almost died on their campus? How do you feel about a superintendent who worked harder to protect a football program than to protect a child? It's time for your voices to be heard.
Yep.
So that's end quote from that call to action.
Right.
And I will say that is one of the benefits of social media. We hear about all the negatives, and they are not wrong. There's a lot of pressure that results from that. But in this case, this kind of pressure, I think, hopefully will bring to light some answers that are needed.
Right. And that email is justiceforaug, AUG, @gmail.com. And so that the dad said the silence protects the wrong people, or the oppressor, as we say. And, you think in these schools, when things happen in school, there are mandatory reporting that has to happen. And then so now we got our second game coming up at Deschler High. And so this time they let folks know we're having more security here at the game, clear bags, metal detectors, and no rushing the field and stuff, which, okay, because emotions are high. Like I said, it's just so sad that we can't come together. We can agree that this should not have happened to August, and we can agree that he didn't go to school looking like that day.
That's exactly
That's what we can agree on.
Yeah.
And
tripping down 6 stairs isn't going to give you that many fractures.
Not when you're like top-notch athlete that could probably land on his feet like a cat anyway, So August 30th, I think that was yesterday.
Yeah, the community had a prayer vigil for him.
Yeah,
and they
at
came
the waterfall. And they said, wear yellow. That's his favorite color. And I always smile when somebody tells me yellow's their favorite color, because I usually say, why? And they say, because of the sunshine.
I know, it's a happy color.
It is. They're sweet. And, we got Pandora's box we've opened. We got good old boys over here, the no big deal crew. And then we got the OMG folks going, y'all don't be teaching my kid what y'all doing right here.
Right. Well, and I think that's why his mom and stepdad put out a video as well saying, please, thank you so much for the support, but we don't endorse or support any violence.
Yeah, like don't go doing that. And don't put your hands on other people. Don't squeeze them or whatever. Well, then through all this, a mom of some elementary kids, she comes up and goes, hey, well, real proud to tell all this, but two of my kids, got in trouble in elementary school, okay? And then so she had to go get them. They got 3 days suspension, and then they have to miss 2 of their Little League games. And mind you, this happened in the same week in the same school system as what happened with August. So that tells you that is there. So we've got a system that's in place. So what happened? Where is the truth?
That's exactly right. Well, and thanks to this community, hopefully they'll get some answers.
Right. And this is not the way to resolve conflict. And the coaches, if you, like I said, my sister's teacher, Trisha, will get close. She's like, I can't let somebody beat somebody up. But, teachers, they have so many rules. But the main rule is that children should be safe. So the conflict resolution, we've got to teach them better than that, but we can't be out here mixing it up in these streets, threatening other content creators like, don't be looking here, and they're saying, where do you live, and stuff like that. None of this needs to go that way. We've got to have some morals dealing with it all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. We can think we know the truth, even if we do rely on all these other sources. But really, it's the people that are directly involved who know. And it is important to give law enforcement time and space to do their job.
Right.
But at the same time, you can see why people were wondering if they were doing their job. So at least, the Tuscumbia City Schools did put out this letter. They did send it to parents. They're saying we are looking into this, whether we think it's the best reaction initially that they could have done or not. At least they're doing it now. At least law enforcement is looking into it. And they know the community, and really the whole world is watching.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's gone there. And August deserves better than that. We can do better by him like that. And that being said, one of his friends, his name starts with a J, he was on the football team too. And you love your friends. I mean, I love people that are good friends. And he said he's going to wear August jersey, and he wasn't going to dress out that day. And he wore a little yellow ribbon here. So, I mean,
that's sweet.
And that seemed like a person with some good thinking, like, I'm right here, don't light a match.
I'm a part of this team, but I support my brother.
Right, exactly. And August was like, that flattered him, but that caused some people to be upset. And then his mama...
Because he's basically saying something wrong happened, or I'm wondering if something wrong happened. So again, he's being a team player, but he's not being the type of team player that some people want.
Right. And he's not going in there, as I call it, with a gasoline cigarette, lighting it up and everything. So he's trying to do what was peaceful. He even was on the sidelines and stuff with his team. This is a hard time. These are kids. We're not saying, they're just saying something ain't right. Let's just fix it. But the guy, he's down there, and his mom owns a business. She's a pharmacist and has a natural type pharmacy, trends that way. Anyway, real smart lady. And then some people were, putting pressure on her, basically, like, don't shop at her store or things like that.
Because her son showed support for August?
Because her son was very mature and kind. But then she's also like, cooler heads are prevailing. She's also like, let's get this straight. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And if we've said something wrong, I'd like for people to tell us. And if anybody, if Kristen and Drew and Jason or anybody from that area wants to talk to us, we'll be happy to talk to them.
Of course.
And to keep this story going. So I just think we got to bring it down a level.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll continue to follow it. I did reach out to August's mom and did not hear back, but certainly our hearts and prayers go out to them and that whole family. And I'll reach out to other family members as well. And like you said, if anybody wants to share their story, we're more than happy to hear it. You can find us on Gulf Coast Confidential, the YouTube channel. You can also email me at molly@mollybarrows.com. I have a website and all over the place on social media. I really wish I weren't in some ways. It's just too much.
You're just team too much.
But at any rate, this is why we do what we do, is to be a voice for victims and to get the truth out there. So anyway, this is one of those stories that I think people will be talking about for some time as we wait for the answers to come out.
Yeah. Well, God bless Tuscumbia and Deschler High and August and his family. we just got to figure this out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Pam, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. And we thank you so much for listening in and watching on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. That is it for traumatic injury or accident. Tuscumbia divided over battered 15-year-old football player August Borden. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our amazing director, editor, and production engineer, the very talented James Roy. And remember, you can check out more of our episodes wherever you're listening or watching, y'all. Just don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law.